verse. It is when I read the end of an alexandrine that the summation of the 12 syllables is produced effectively in the verse. Let us suppose then that the whole of the coup de dé was written as one single verse. That is to say, since a verse for Mallarme is always two verses rhymed together, as two adjoined verses, each symbolically of 12 pages, 24 pages, 12 pages, 12 pages. What Mallarme is describing here is what happens at the end of a poem, in which something is in the process of being summed, and the total count is completed precisely with the word consecrated, sacre in French, which at the same time, this word, consecrated, sacre, would designate the final crowning of the septentrion. Consecrated would then be the last word that completes the count, still enigmatic, of that unique number that cannot be another. The stellar throw of dice is thus a mental throw of dice, that of the reader reading the text, and the sky is not the night sky, but the white of the page we are reading. The reader believes that the poem is describing to him a stellar night outside of the book, but in fact, Mallarme describes what he himself is doing in the poem. He enumerates his total count in the making, which is like a glorification of a meter to come, which is achieved at the word consecrated. But a count of what? If we start out from the hypothesis that 7 is a secret and constellatory meter of the poem, we still need to find out what it counts. What could the 7 have enumerated in the coup de dé? To conclusively track down this enigma, we will take a look at the final moral of the poem. Toute pensée émet un coup de dé. The final sentence at the bottom of the page 11. Every thought emits a throw of dice. It is separated of the text as a moral. You know that a moral is supposed to sum up the deep meaning of a fable in one single phrase. In this case, to sum up the very essence of our poem. Now, what could this statement mean? It could mean, for example, that every thought take a risk. But this would be a total platitude, unworthy of the coup de dé. We can surely do better in our interpretation, but I have always been struck by how difficult commentators find it to surpass this level of banality. Let's try to decipher this statement, keeping in mind the idea of a secret meter, and asking ourselves whether we can in this way draw out a more interesting meaning from it. We can propose the following interpretation. When you think, you must pass by way of language, and thus you must use a certain number of linguistic units. For example, the declaration I love you has 3 words, 8 letters, 5 vowels, etc. It produces a series of implicit numerical counts, but this counts belongs to pure chance, to a simple throw of dice in regard to the meaning of the phrase. There is no link between the meaning of I love you and the number 3, 8 or 5. No link that is apart from a purely chance one. However, what is proper to the metric poem is precisely to contest this purely chance link between thought and count by associating the meaning of the verse to the enumeration of the syllables necessary to formulate it. To conquer chance word by word, as Mallarme writes in one of his critical texts, to conquer chance word by word, to try to associate meaningfully sense and count, such is the supreme task of metrical poetry, even if the struggle seems lost in advance. But in that case, doesn't this conclusion, toute pensée émet un coup de dé, every thought emits a throw of dice, every thought emits a series of numbers, of hazardous number. Doesn't this conclusion contain the metrical key that will permit us to know what the final 7 counts, the unit of the counts? In other words, won't the secret of this moral of the poem be to indicate to us the linguistic unit we must enumerate in order to obtain the unique meter? If the poem doesn't enumerate syllables as a classical poem, what does it enumerate? Doesn't this phrase, this moral, couldn't this moral tell us the solution to this enigma? Let's now ask whether there exists a linguistic element that counted in this final phrase, every thought emits a throw of dice, would give a 7 as a result. There is indeed one such, and this is the simplest that could be. The conclusion of the coup de dé contains 7 words. Toute pensée, aimer, un coup de dé. 7 words. Every thought emits a throw of dice. It's a good translation. Our hypothesis follows naturally from this. What if Mallarme had counted the words of his poem? What if his meter was lexical rather than syllabic? In this case, we should have to present the matter as follows. The conclusion, 7 words long, would represent in some way the musical key of the poem. It would indicate that the coup de dé is written in 7, as a sonata might be written in C. The 7 being isolated for itself in the final phrase, clearly separated from the rest of the text. On the other hand, the unique number, properly speaking, would be the result of the total count in the making of the stellar throne of dice. It would have the word sac consecrated as its last element, and being greater than 7, since from the first word of the poem to the word consecrator there are at a glance many hundreds of words, it must contain 7 in a sufficiently remarkable fashion that we would hesitate to put it down to chance alone when we discover it. Please, this seems just a stupid hypothesis. I ask you to be patient. It's going to be interesting. Let's set out a rule of validation for this strange hypothesis. We must obtain a number that brings to light a 7, as we have said in some remarkable way. Since the poem obviously contains, as I have said, many hundreds of words, it will be written in 3 numerals, XXX. If consecrated was, for example, the 777th word of the poem, 777, the number would indeed have a number, we would indeed have a number linked in a remarkable way to 7. Another cipher, however, has an immediate significance for the coup de dé, namely 0. Since it is the obvious symbol for both for nothingness and the void, 0, and for the vortex, the whirlpool, that is described as circular and in which the ship and the master are lost. So we can imagine 2 other numbers capable of representing our meter, formed exclusively from 7 and 0, namely 700, 700, 770, 770, and 707, 707, as the Boeing. If we end up with one of these 4 counts, we will be able to say that we have not necessarily taken a wrong turn. Any other result, on the other hand, will discredit our hypothesis entirely. But even if we arrive at one of the 4 numbers, this will not be enough. A simple chance could have given rise to this sum. To be sure that a meter is genuinely encrypted in the poem, Mallarme would have had to have given us the means within the poem to validate this possibility. In other words, the poem would have to speak implicitly of one of these 4 numbers, 777, 700, 707, or 770. One of its pages would have to make sense if we understand it as evoking one of the multiple numbers of set that we have isolated, as in a charade or a riddle. For suppose that we were to discover that a supposedly obscure passage of a poem becomes clear once we understand that it calls the unique number in the meaning of the text in what it says, and not through it counts in the number of its word. And if this number in the riddle was the same as the number that the word consecrated, sac, completes, then we could no longer speak of chance, and we would have our proof of an encryption at work in the coup de day. So let's be clear. I speak loud. Here is the key, 7 words. Sac would be the word number 777, 700, 707, or 770. 4 possibilities. I don't say now what if one of these 4 numbers are good, okay? But I will try to show you that one of these 4 numbers are coded in the text by the meaning of the text. Page 6, please. Page 6. My thesis is that we can read the central page of the poem, page 6, which is called the page of the comme si. Comme si means as if, as the site of this riddle, this charade in French. What does this page 6 consist of? We read 2 comme si, written in capitals, which frame from the top left and bottom right a text that links them through a diagonal arrangement, like a sort of staircase down which we tumble from one to the other. What does this passage say? It is at first sight very obscure. Une simple insinuation, au silence enroulé avec ironie, où le mystère précipité hurlé dans quelques proches tourbillons d'hilarité et d'horreur, voltige autour du gouffre sans le joncher ni fuir, et berce le vierge indice comme si. Et on berce le vierge indice comme si. Translated in English, it will be as obscure as in French. A simple insinuation in irony entirely coiled in silence or hurled, screamed in some imminent vortex of hilarity and horror, hovers on the brink of the gulf without sprinkling it nor fleeing, and draws from it the virgin clue as if. Without elucidating right away the whole of the text, we see from the outset that it is question of the vortex. There is a vortex